Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering. Give me 1 second here. We will be covering Arsenal signing Raheem Sterling and Sancho going to Chelsea. We'll talk about the rest of the transfer deadline action. Heavy day in terms of the transfer deadline. We'll preview the game we're all looking forward to this weekend, the rivalry, the derby, Manchester United versus Liverpool. We'll do a full, Premier League full match day 3 preview, just a general preview of the match day 3. And then stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you the daily edition of my reactions to the top soccer headlines. Before we start off, I'd like to say, if you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insight. Whether it is a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button. Let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to the GSMCpodcast.net to tip, donate, to leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We start off though with Arsenal have signed Raheem Sterling on loan and Jadon Sancho's going to Chelsea. Let's start off with Raheem Sterling being on loan, going to Arsenal on loan. So it is a loan deal. There is no obligation to buy. It is strictly a loan deal. It's strictly a loan deal for the 29-year-old Raheem Sterling. Let's read the... So, we know Sterling has 3 years remaining on his current contract at Chelsea, and, the situation going on at Chelsea, now making the squad over these past couple games, sort of, not tension, but, Enzo Maresca letting him know he's not really part of the plans. Sterling being 29, sort of desperate to get back in the England squad, play back at the highest level, get quality minutes for a team, competing. So he has been able to pull off this move. It seemed like it was sort of a last minute move for Arsenal, and the fact that it came so late in the window, and there was talks of Arsenal potentially going for other players that they wanted. Specifically, I heard Kingsley Coman and others, but it was Raheem Sterling who they settled with, and as soon as this, that deal kind of went through, Chelsea agreed to sign Manchester United's winger, Jadon Sancho, on loan, which that one does have an obligation to buy in the following summer, but it's only around 25 million. Going back, though, to the Raheem Sterling move to Arsenal, look, Mikel Arteta did initially distance himself from the fact that they make a move. Maybe Arsenal looked at him as one of the later options. When I was, specifically when we talk about players like Kingsley Coman and so on that they were linked with. But I'll tell you this, Raheem Sterling, he gives you experience. He gives you sort of Premier League title winning pedigree. And there are his pluses with him. Number one, he gives you a little bit something different than what you have with Martinelli on the left-hand side. Is someone that can, with extreme pace, extreme verticality, someone that's going to run at defenders, get them out their back foot. It has a little bit of quality and end product to get the goal as well. The thing is with Sterling is he has not been the same. Last year, 2 years at Chelsea, it hasn't been the same Sterling we've seen at Manchester City. But obviously, a change of scenery, going to, a different club, being coached by Mikel Arteta, that was his assistant coach at his City days. That's where he was the best. And I'll tell you this, for getting him on a season loan, not having to spend the transfer fee for him, a guy that can compete for spots with the wingers, can compete with Martinelli, but also give you that sort of, squad player off the bench with the quality he has. And look, right now, this Sterling, right now that we've seen at Chelsea, okay, he'll be just a squad piece for Arsenal. But if he's able to go to Arsenal and start rediscovering some of his old form, he can really push for a spot. I believe in the quality Raheem Sterling has, and he is 29. So you cannot say that, I don't think there's really a physical drop off in him in terms of athleticism. I don't see that. I just think in those little bit moments, his confidence is low when he's overthinking certain things. In certain moments, he's trying to do too much. Things that can, that with the change of scenery, being in a new environment, I think some of the issues that Raheem Sterling has had with Chelsea could be fixed with a new environment. I do think this is a good move for Arsenal because they don't have to spend the transfer fee. Now it'll be interesting to see how much of this year's salary will they take on. We know that Arsenal had specific requirements that was reported about how much of the salary they really want to take, but I have not seen that exactly how much exactly, but no, overall, a lot of people are questioning this move. Raheem Sterling's nowhere near at the level. He's just a squad. He's not going to provide much for Arsenal, blah, blah, blah. But I will not underestimate Raheem Sterling potentially getting back into old form. I do think that's a possibility. Joining Arsenal, change of scenery, and he's a guy that you can bring on late in the Champions League. You need a goal, he'll make it difficult for a defender. Going at them, attacking them one-on-one, attacking them with pace. He's someone to bring off the bench, going up against tired legs. I can see him not have exactly a Trossard impact, but something similar. Someone that can come in and immediately make an impact against tiring legs. There is a benefit to Raheem Sterling being at Arsenal. I do. And there is really, it's sort of similar to the Chiesa move to Liverpool in the fact that they had a low transfer fee. This is a no transfer fee, essentially. This is only a season-long loan. We don't know exactly the numbers that Arsenal will be taking on, but he's a guy that can come in and he, at worst, can be a squad piece for Arsenal. And look, if he's just another squad piece, well then, so be it. It's a 1-year loan. I think Arsenal, obviously there could have been better options at Arsenal. You could argue Arsenal's main hole to plug was that number 9 position, which they still don't have a natural game in, game out goal scoring number 9. But again, Ivan Toney was available and they didn't deem him as that sort of answer. And that's really what it comes down to. As far as Jadon Sancho going to Chelsea, now all of us Chelsea fans are riding on the positive of what we saw this past weekend, and we're a little bit, we're a little, what's the word? What's the word I'm thinking of? We're a little cautious of being a little bit too negative on Chelsea right now, just based on the positivity of this weekend's results, which we haven't seen much in the past few years. But again, this is another, it just seems like every time Chelsea makes a signing, they want to make their fans even more confused over what direction they're going. I don't think it could get even more confusing after João Felix, but somehow they managed to make it even more confusing. This is a club. I said this after the signings. I said this, after the signings we made, last summer. This guy's in this position. This is a club that already has Noni Madueke, Mikhailo Mudryk, Pedro Neto, Nkunku, João Felix, Cole Palmer. It goes, he goes on. And Jadon Sancho now comes in. I mean, what? Especially you have a player that you spent in a lot of money for, who's a raw talent in Mikhailo Mudryk, who hasn't been able to find his form at Chelsea. What he needs is more experience to see. So we can see, he's really on his last legs almost. And we need to be able to tell this season, is he the guy going forward? Will he be, is he for Chelsea? Is he going to, start developing in the right direction? A few players actually at Chelsea are kind of like that. Enzo Fernandez is also another player that's in that similar boat. But how are we going to do that if we have all these wingers already? There's already Pedro Neto, there's Noni Madueke, there's Jadon Sancho. Now Noni Madueke, he had a good game this past weekend, scoring a hat-trick. Now Jadon Sancho comes in to compete with him. Now, I don't understand it from Chelsea's perspective. You have so many attacking options, so many. The last thing you need to do, and the crazy thing is, you have so many attacking options, but you have one clear hole that you don't want to address, and that is the number 9. Now, they tried to address it with Osimhen. They couldn't get it done. For some reason, you could get João Felix, Pedro Neto, Jadon Sancho. You could get all those three done, but you cannot get done Victor Osimhen, who's been the answer for Chelsea over the past few years now. That's been the hole at Chelsea for a while, for a long while, but for some reason they don't want to address that, and they will just want to keep getting attackers like Nkunku, who I didn't mind when we signed him originally. João Felix, we got him this time around, plays sort of a similar role as Nkunku. Pedro Neto, Mikhailo Mudryk, Nani Madueke, Jadon Sancho. You know, we offloaded Sterling, but there's still an insane amount of attacking options this team has. It's too much. You know, they don't play enough games for all these attacking options. They don't play enough games. Let me see. By the way, I didn't discuss this, but Chelsea did play their second leg in the Europa Conference League against Servette. They moved on. They lost 2-1, but they moved on aggregate. But I'm just seeing like there's just too many attacking players to manage. Too many. And now you're adding in Jadon Sancho as well. And I'll tell you this, you know, Mudryk and Neto, they'll play off the or no. Pedro Neto. Okay, wow, okay. Pedro Neto, Madueke, Jadon Sancho, they all three primarily operate with on their right hand side. You know, while Mudryk is the only player that can play with the left. But I think now Pedro Neto, he has a brilliant right foot as well. I think Pedro Neto will play a little bit more on the left because Sancho is already there competing with Mudryk. It just, the balance is so off. The balance is extremely off. As far as Jadon Sancho, look, he's had an on top of it all, Chelsea, the last thing they need is an inconsistent player. João Felix, inconsistent. Mikhailo Mudryk, he's consistently awful at Chelsea so far. Nicholas Jackson, okay. Well, we'll be nice and say inconsistent. Nicholas Jackson, Christopher Nkunku. Since he got to Chelsea, I have to say he has been inconsistent. Now, I mean, not in Nicholas Jackson, Nkunku. Since he's got to Chelsea, he has been inconsistent. He was one of the signings I really, really liked because of his profile. But let's be honest, he hasn't really taken off at Chelsea in the small amount of games he missed. But he still has time to prove himself. Pedro Neto, we don't know yet. At Wolves, he was consistent, but I'll put him down in the inconsistent tab because he's injury prone. I already said João Felix, inconsistent. Noni Madueke, extremely inconsistent. The last thing Chelsea needed is another inconsistent player in Jadon Sancho. You know, Jadon Sancho, before the Manchester United move, he was a superstar, playing at Dortmund, playing quality football. Manchester United totally bust. Had a very few moments of very few positive moments. Just couldn't get into the team at Manchester United. Couldn't solidify his spot. Didn't have a consistent rhythm of play, a consistent set of good performances. And he gets loaned out to Borussia Dortmund this past season, and when he got loaned out for the second half, he had some good signs here and there, but he didn't exactly light it up at Borussia Dortmund. He had one marvelous game in the Champions League semi-final against PSG, that first leg, but didn't really light it up. So for me, that's another thing that confuses me on top of it. I don't understand Chelsea's transfer strategy, but you know what? We just... we'll slowly see what they're trying to do. I really don't understand as a Chelsea fan. I'm sure many Chelsea fans out there don't understand. And, I was sitting down with one of my fellow friends who's also a Chelsea fan. And he happens to be one of the most positive, deluded Chelsea fans out there. And I even look at him and he's confused. Like, he's laughing because he's always positive when it comes to Chelsea. He's laughing at how the transfer just makes no sense. And this is a guy that will religiously defend Chelsea. It doesn't make sense to any of us. And if it doesn't make sense to Chelsea fans, well, only the Lord knows what the other people think about it. short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll do an analysis of all the transfer deadline action.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we reacted to Arsenal signing Raheem Sterling on loan and Jadon Sancho going to Chelsea. We move on to do an analysis of all the transfer deadline action. We start off with, where do we go? Okay, let's go to Victor Osimhen. Osimhen is in limbo. Chelsea did not work out, and we don't know exactly why. I guess they failed to agree on a contract, or Chelsea failed to agree a deal with Napoli. Well, no, okay. So sources say that Osimhen, that Napoli accepted an 80 million euro offer from the Saudi Pro League, Al Ahly, but he does not want to leave European football. So he has the ambition to stay in European football. He doesn't want to go to Saudi. Him being age 25, in his prime, doesn't want to go to Saudi. Clearly, that didn't stop another player, which we'll talk about next. But sources say that, and now Chelsea were they find themselves in a position that they could take advantage of that, because they've had interest for him in a while, but they just couldn't reach a deal, and now Osimhen has a tough battle because he's kind of, Napoli, Antonio Conte, he's sort of accepted that he was moving on. From the moment he got to the club, he's trying to bring in Romelu Lukaku, and, it's clear Antonio Conte has his plans. Now, Osimhen, now he's going to have to stay at Napoli unless he wants to leave at Saudi. We know that Saudi transfer window is in October. Sort of kind of battle for his place. Antonio Conte kind of already accepted that Osimhen, or he, I don't know. Okay, look, I think Antonio Conte basically assumed that, okay, he's going to be gone. Maybe the hierarchy allowed him already to know that, so he just planned without him. And I'll see, will Antonio Conte open back Osimhen with open arms? Or, Antonio Conte, he could be a little bit stubborn and, make it very, very difficult. And Osimhen, he's going to have an uphill battle now to climb at Napoli, because the only way out for him now is the Saudi Pro League, in which, unless he wants to. Now, could he maybe take a year? He doesn't want to play at Napoli anymore. Maybe take a year in Saudi and then join back. Will the Saudi club do that unless he extends his deal with them? That's something, that's something to be hashed about. But it's looking like Osimhen is going to be at Napoli for this, at least until January. And he's really going to have to sort of fight for his place at Napoli. Ivan Toney is an interesting one. Now, Ivan Toney, which is also Al Ahly, is the same club that tried to go after Napoli, tried to go after Osimhen. In fact, they agreed to deal with Napoli, but Osimhen does not want to go to Saudi. Ivan Toney has signed. Brentford accepted a fee around 40 million pounds or so for Ivan Toney, and it seems like this deal was contingent on whether or not they couldn't sign Osimhen, because it's reported they couldn't get Osimhen and Ivan Toney. So when they sort of got the information that Victor Osimhen wasn't willing to go to Al Ahly, Al Ahly, then it seemed like they really focused in on Ivan Toney, and they were able to. They were already, with Brentford, the negotiations was kind of already laid out. Then it really came down to Ivan Toney on whether or not he was willing to accept the deal, and he was willing to accept the deal, go to Saudi. For me, it's a shame. Ivan Toney is a 28-year-old. At the peak of his prime, a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. In my opinion, he could have gave some of these top teams a chance. He would have gave, for my opinion, Ivan Toney. Arsenal get Ivan Toney. They're much closer to Manchester City than they would with them signing Mikel Merino. Now, obviously, I said this yesterday, even before the injury. So this is not something that I'm making my opinion based on the injury that Mikel Merino suffered in training. I think a proven Premier League goal scorer that can play as a number 9 and get you goals game in and game out would give Arsenal much more of an impact in terms of trying to catch Manchester City than Ivan Toney. Then Mikel Merino. You go to a team like Chelsea that are in need for a proven Premier League goal scorer that can get goals game in, game out. I think he would have been much better signing than Jadon Sancho, João Felix, Pedro Neto. Well, okay, maybe not Pedro Neto, because I think Pedro Neto can come good. But João Felix and Jadon Sancho, I think Ivan Toney would have been much better signing for them in terms of trying to elevate them into the top 4. And Ivan Toney, he's a brilliant player, brilliant talent, 28 years old. The fact that he's moving to Saudi is really, for me, it's really disappointing. I enjoy watching him play. He plays with quality. He has verticality with pace. He's a good goal scorer. He's good on the ball. He can join, drop down, and sort of the ball will stick, and can bring other players involved. He has real quality. He was involved in the English squad, in the English setup. He's a brilliant player. Good penalty taker as well. But it seems like he was pretty desperate to get out of Brentford. It seemed like Brentford were also very willing. They've kind of accepted that Ivan Toney. This is part of their model. Sell when the players get, reached peak value, and then reinvested, find gems. And they've sort of accepted, and they weren't pushing out Ivan Toney, but they were essentially, they were more than comfortable with him leaving. They accepted the transfer fee. They did well to get £40 million out of him as well. They didn't do well, but just because of how much it was in limbo, his value was slowly going down, because it got more and more obvious that Ivan Toney and Brentford relationship was, going away. Like, Ivan Toney wanted to leave. So I thought they did well to get the money, and I thought he could have provided for Arsenal. I thought he would have been the perfect signing for Arsenal, I have to say. I think he would have been a better signing for Arsenal than Raheem Sterling. The only difference is, though, the reason why I gave Mikel Merino the comparison instead of Raheem Sterling is Raheem Sterling, they got him on loan. There's no transfer fee. Now, you had to pay his wages, but there's no transfer fee. With Mikel Merino, the transfer fee would have been around the similar range that Ivan Toney would have been around, give or take, maybe 5-10 million or more. So, yeah, it's... For me, I think Arsenal made a huge mistake, and I think they kind of overthought it too. Now, Mikel Merino is a good player, don't get me wrong. It's just that whenever you have that proven goal scorer in a team that's missing it, it gives you... Look at how Manchester City are with Haaland, You need that sort of player that can get a goal out of nothing. You need that sort of player. That's what Chelsea lack as well. Okay, we move on. Let's move on. There's a lot of news that happened this transfer deadline, I have to say. A lot of news. And it's been hard to track everything. So Manuel Ugarte, he has sealed his move to Manchester United in terms of contract sign. We talked about this a few days ago, but it wasn't sealed, right? So Ivan Toney, he signs for Al Ahly. Neto, he's gonna join Arsenal on loan. He's gonna be the backup goalkeeper, obviously. Neto, the goalkeeper from Bournemouth, he's gonna join Arsenal on loan. In the fact that Ramsdale was sold to Southampton. Arsenal have sold Eddie Nketiah to Crystal Palace. Wolves were able to add Brazilian international Andre. Palace were able to sign Maxence Lacroix for Wolfsburg. We know that Osimhen is stuck in Napoli. Ward-Prowse and Morato. Morato, the Brazilian player from Benfica, the defender, signed for Nottingham Forest. Fulham is able to get Reece Nelson on loan from Arsenal. Carlos Soler went to West Ham on loan from PSG. And then Matt Turner is going to Crystal Palace on a loan. And yeah, now it's also reported that Trevor Chalobah to Crystal Palace happened, but it hasn't been announced. I guess it depends on the paperwork and all that, and the fax machines and all that. But that will remain to be seen. Why they use fax machines in 2024? That's a whole different conversation there. But just a lot of news in this transfer window, and I'm happy this transfer window's over. I like transfer windows. I like the excitement of it and all that. But, a lot of teams waited a little late for this transfer window, and it just congested everything. Now we know where all the players are, give or take, and we could just, watch the football and enjoy the football. And we have a brilliant weekend of football in which we'll be previewing the next 2 segments. Show break here coming up. When we come back, we will be previewing one of the great games coming up this weekend, Manchester United taking on Liverpool.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed the transfer deadline action. We move on to do sort of a preview of Manchester United versus Liverpool, the big game coming up this weekend. The derby, the rivalry amongst these two teams. And whenever Manchester United play Liverpool, it's always something to look forward to. Now, this game will be played at Old Trafford. Manchester United will be the home team in this game. And, Manchester United are coming off of a loss to Brighton, 2-1. They had that opening day late win over Fulham, and then their loss against Brighton, in the sort of dying moments. And then you had Liverpool, who's coming off 2 wins, 2 comfortable wins in the first game against Ipswich away. A little bit slow, expected, playing a newly promoted team at their pitch, but eventually got themselves going and had a great second half to cap it off. And then against Brentford, showed some quality play, had good possession, played fast, moved the ball quickly, made clever runs. Overall, great performance from Liverpool. Now, so based on the form, obviously Liverpool are the favorites in this game. The thing that, just based on form, now with it being at Old Trafford, I'd like to see how Arne Slot's first derby, how Liverpool are psychologically prepared in this Manchester United game, going to Old Trafford. It's going to be difficult. Even, these sort of games, I have to say, I always say these sort of derby games, you throw form out of the window, but when it comes to United-Liverpool, you don't know. You remember a few years back when Ronaldo's first year, when Liverpool went to United and destroyed them 5-0, and that's when United were in poor form and Liverpool were in really good form. But if you go back and then you move on a year later. Is it a year later? Yeah, a year later, United take on Liverpool. No, not a year. Not a year later. A few years later, actually. Eric Ten Hag's first year, United have a decent season. I believe they finished third that year, second or third. They were up there. Had a really good season under Ten Hag, and they went against Liverpool team at Anfield later in the season, a Liverpool team that was bang out of form. They didn't even qualify for the Champions League. It was a transition Liverpool team, really weak team, and Liverpool put 7 at them at Anfield. 7. So sometimes the form, will play a factor, and sometimes it's a derby game. You don't know. It's electric. You remember in Eric Ten Hag's first year, that same season, they did play Manchester United. Were coming off 2 horrible losses, their first 2 games. Their third game, they take on Liverpool, a Liverpool team that also had 2 draws, so weren't really taking over as well. That's when Liverpool went on to have that poor season. Manchester United beat Liverpool 2-0 despite those 2 opening day losses. So you don't want to put form too much into it. Now look, Manchester United, I think Manchester United against Brighton, there was a lot of criticism for Eric Ten Hag, and deservedly so. Number one, he didn't play a striker. He didn't play Xerxes despite the opening game. He sort of went with the false 9 approach, playing Rashford, Mount, Diallo, Bruno Fernandes from 4. There's no Mason Mount in this game. He's not available. He's hurt. I'm interested to see, does Bruno Fernandes now drop down into his natural position, and then you bring in a Xerxes, a pure number 9. I want to see how they adapt to it. Does Harry Maguire keep his place now with Matthias de Ligt having another week to settle in at Manchester United? That's also something interesting, something I'm interested about. I want to see how Eric Ten Hag chooses to approach this game. As far as Liverpool on the slot, I don't think there's going to be any massive changes. They lined up against Ipswich Town. Let me see, actually. They played, I believe they played the same starting lineup against Brentford and Ipswich Town. Let's go check that real quick. Okay, no, they had Kwanzaa in there instead of Konate. Now I think Konate will be back introduced. But overall, Liverpool is going to be that same 11 that we saw against Brentford, their first team. There's no real things. Eric Ten Hag sort of been tinkering. I don't expect that from Liverpool. I think they're going to go with the same sort of 11 as they did against Brentford. They're going to go after this game. They're going to go hungry. They're going to move the ball quickly. They're going to make it difficult for Manchester United to get near the ball because of how quick they can play the ball. If I'm Manchester United, I limit the amount of opportunities Trent gets the ball with time to make a pass. He has been absolutely great this season, and a lot of it is because he's been given time to look up and make the pass and play a sublime ball. If I'm Eric Ten Hag, Marcus Rashford, the work rate has to be there from him. Marcus Rashford, because he's going to be probably playing on the left wing, which I don't agree with because he's been poor form, and I think you should bring in Alejandro Garnacho, who's been pretty good for Manchester United this season, very, very lively. Marcus Rashford is getting on Manchester United team based on his name and not based on his form and performances, because he's been horrible over the past year and a half now. He's been horrible. He has not been deadly at all. He has that magical moment in him once in a while because there is pure quality there, but when his confidence is shot, he is a horrible player. There's no 2 ways about it. He gives you 4 or 5s out of 10s on a consistent basis. Alejandro Garnacho could come in and you make it in, but having a guy like him to bring off the bench too against tiring defense, that also he also does huge value in that too, and I believe he performs better actually coming off the bench than him starting the game. But whoever's playing on that side, and it has to be sort of a team understanding. Even the whoever's playing, in the central attacking position, limit the time and space Trent has on the ball. Don't give him opportunities to pick out a ball, because all of his work doesn't just come from crosses in. A lot of it comes from him just receiving the ball and having so much time and space to hit a through ball in behind. The limit his space. That's very, very critical. You want to limit the involvement Trent and Robertson have on the game, because the one thing that what I see from Arne Slot's Liverpool team and what I see from Jurgen Klopp's time at Liverpool, the one thing from these 2 games that I've noticed is the amount of of how much the fullbacks are involved are the same. The fullbacks are a huge part of the way how they're playing with Arne Slot at Liverpool. They're making runs forward. They're overlapping. They're not getting into midfield, but they're receiving the ball, and they're having they're having the flexibility and the freedom to try to pick balls. Their involvement is still a huge part in how Liverpool play under Arne Slot. So what Manchester United do, they have to limit that, and then Manchester United, they need to be able to control the midfield. This is the home game for Manchester United. You need to be able to control your midfield. You have a midfield of Gravenberch sort of playing an unnatural position, McAllister, Szoboszlai. There's no athleticism and defensive presence in there. Manchester United need to take advantage of that. Now, Ugarte is not going to be able to play tomorrow, which he would have been a perfect player to physically, be dominant in this sort of game, because he can dominate Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, specifically Gravenberch and McAllister. There's no six there. So if you're Manchester United, you need to be able to control possession and need to physically dominate the midfield. Casemiro, he's athletically not the same player that he was, but he's still physically imposing, and he still has a strong presence to him, and he'll be very important in this game to control that midfield. You want to control the counterattacks as well. Manchester United against Fulham in that second half, Manchester United looked so vulnerable in counterattacking situations. They left players 3-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1. Against Brighton, there was a few counterattack situations they left open as well. You cannot do that with Mohamed Salah, Jota, Luis Diaz, or they will tear you apart. You give them consistent 3-on-1s, 2-on-1s, they will put 3-4 ball in the back of the net by halftime. Manchester United have to be clever in the way that they press Liverpool, and they have to be clever in the attack and how much numbers they send forward. Because if they leave that sort of time, they leave that sort of space in behind that they left in these opening two games, Liverpool will tear them apart. I think Manchester United they don't need to be compact. They don't need to park the bus. They don't need to do all that. I think Manchester United should still go for this game. You're playing at Old Trafford. You're playing against a rival. They should still go for it, obviously. They should still go for it. But they have to be measured in the times that they press, how much numbers they send forward, and they need to have a balanced attack. They can't completely, go all out attack in this sort of game. They need to be balanced. They can't be too defensive, but can't be too progressive as well. They need to have a balance, and if they can find the right sort of balance and then use the players like Xerxes and the quality of Bruno Fernandes in midfield with the individual quality of the players going forward, I think they have an opportunity. And I have to say, I think this is going to be a draw. I think it's going to be a narrow one. I think this is early on the season. Both teams are not going to try to give too much away, and we'll see. But if Manchester United try to play the same ways they tried to play against Fulham and Brighton, and press and be very, very aggressive going forward, Liverpool will tear them apart. So it's very contingent on how Erik ten Hag operates. And in times past, in these sort of games, what we've seen from Manchester United is a little bit too much of a defensive display in which they park the bus, and that's also will be to the detriment of Manchester United, because if they get too compact and they get suffocated and they get pushed back by Liverpool, and Liverpool are completely dominating possession, it'll be a struggle for Manchester United to play out, and eventually the breakthrough will still come for Liverpool. So again, you need to have the right balance of your Erik ten Hag. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll do a Premier League full match day 3 preview.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we did a Manchester United Liverpool full preview. We move on to do a sort of Premier League full match day 3 preview. let's go open up the game. Some interesting games going on. Obviously, we talked about United Liverpool in the past segment, so we're not going to go over those again. Arsenal taking on Brighton. Brighton, this could be a tricky game for Arsenal. Now, Arsenal, I think they've developed this sort of consistency, and they've been really, really brilliant, and they've not allowed slip-ups. We saw what they were able to do against Aston Villa. But Brighton, they're coming off 2 wins. They've shown some real attacking intent, real attacking display. I like they were a relatively unknown Brighton and Hove Albion with this new manager, Fabian Herzl, a 31-year-old that hasn't had much experience at all whatsoever. It's a relatively unknown how they were going to approach games, but they've shown some real quality, some real ability, and they've been aggressive as well in terms of transfers. To improve the team, they've shown a real desire to want to compete. And look, I'm not sleeping on Brighton. I think Brighton by the way, is a well-oiled machine, old club, and the quality Brighton do have forward. Specifically with the likes of Mitoma. We know Danny Welbeck, what he is with now. João Pedro, Minte. Yankuba Minte was actually a player, the Gambian international, that I'm really tracking. He's shown some real ability. He's only 20 years old, a player that needs to be talked about more. Billy Gilmore, he's been sent to Napoli, which is a shame for Brighton because Billy Gilmore has some real quality in terms of being able to control possession in midfield. But he will be joining Napoli. He'll be joining his Scottish teammate, Scott McTominay, who's also going to be at Napoli. So but yeah, I think Brighton have that sort of clever quality players, and I think they're coming in good form. But Arsenal, they just have playing with that sort of swagger, that sort of belief, like we're winning, we win every game. They go in with that sort of notion. I wanted to see mentality wise that Aston Villa game was a great test, and it showed Arsenal are mentally up for it, and yeah. I think Arsenal will take care of Brighton, but I do think it will be a good game. Nottingham Forest take on Wolves. Look, this game is going to be played at City Ground. Wolves, they had some decent moments against Chelsea, but overall were way too open and allowed way too much space. I like the way that Wolves play. I don't mind playing open, and I think, but you got to pick and choose your moments. They're coming off 2 losses. There's a desperation with Wolves now going up against Nottingham Forest. I think they will get the deal done against Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest, they actually played midweek AFL Cup to Newcastle, but so far in the Premier League they have 4 points, which is a great start for Nottingham Forest, as they're kind of in the battle to stay alive. But I do think Wolves have the quality. I think they will create enough opportunities and just create more good chances, and I think they will go into Nottingham and get the win. Leicester City, they're looking to get their first win of the season, taking on Aston Villa. Look, Aston Villa, they had that game last weekend in which it was a disappointing game to Arsenal. They weren't able to get it done, but Aston Villa, they've proven that they can go into difficult atmospheres and get the victory, as they did opening day against West Ham. I think going to King's Power Stadium will be difficult, but I think Aston Villa just has much more quality than Leicester, and I think Leicester will struggle in this game. We saw Leicester's coming off their draw against Tottenham, in which they got completely suffocated in the first half, and then they lost to Fulham in a game that they were comfortably second best. I definitely think Aston Villa will get it done, and they will beat Leicester, and they will beat Leicester City. Ipswich Town going to Fulham. Big game for Ipswich Town. Going into Fulham, they're sort of desperate, coming off their 2 opening day losses to Manchester City and Liverpool in that opening game. I see them getting the point out of this just based on the desperation that they have. Fulham, they had 1 win and 1 loss. I definitely think Fulham are the favorites, but I'll say Ipswich, because they need this sort of result. They need to sort of kick off their season, for their battle to stay alive. Brentford take on Southampton. Southampton has, I believe, 2 losses so far. That opening day, they got the red card. Early red card. Newcastle got early red card, and they still couldn't take advantage. They created a lot of opportunities, and they controlled the ball, but they couldn't get the goal. Against Nottingham Forest, they lose 1-0 to a late winner for Morgan Gibbs-White, but they were thoroughly outclassed by Nottingham Forest. They were thoroughly outclassed by Nottingham Forest, and that was at St. Mary's Stadium. Don't think Southampton is a particularly good team. Don't think they're going to stay up, I have to be honest. And sorry, I was having technical difficulties. Don't think they're going to stay up. I think Brentford has some real quality. Even with Ivan Toney not being there, they've played pretty well this season without him. Brentford will get that done. Everton taking on Bournemouth. Everton had a disappointing opening day, very disappointing opening day against Brighton, and then they compound that by getting trounced by Tottenham 4-0. Now, I think the scoreline was a little deceiving just based on what we saw on the pitch, right? I do think Everton, I think Tottenham were much, much better, and I think it was about a 3-0 game. But Everton were, outclassed, and, they are in a desperate situation as well. I don't think they will be in the relegation race this season, though. And I do think going up against Bournemouth, they've had that opening day draw against Nottingham Forest, and then they had that draw against Newcastle too, in which I thought Bournemouth actually played really, really well. This is a difficult one. This is one of the more harder ones this week. I will edge it to Everton just because of the desperation factor and the fact that they're playing Goodison. I think Goodison is going to be alive for it. These are just, they need to pick up. Everton do need to start picking up results because they don't want to be caught in the relegation race again. West Ham taking on Manchester City. City are obviously favorites with the amount of quality that they have. It will be a little tricky because this will be in London Stadium. Obviously, I'm going to say City wins. But I see West Ham. They use the crowd to their advantage. They do have some ability. They have quality players like Lucas Paquetá and Mikel Antonio and all them that can make moments in transition. Mohamed Kudus, which I think they'll be necessarily. But if we have to be honest, City's just City. And I'm never going to choose a team over City. It's just, no. Chelsea taking on Crystal Palace. Now, it's very, very important that Chelsea ride the momentum. Chelsea need to ride the momentum from that 6-2 win to Wolves in this game. The problem with Chelsea over the past seasons, they have great results, or not great results, but good results, and then follow with the absolute dud. We'll see on Sunday whether this Chelsea team is, the old team of the past, or we won't really get much answers. They should beat Crystal Palace, but it'll be good signs that maybe this is a new team. But yes, Chelsea, they need to get it done. They need to ride the momentum. The key for them is the way that they were able to move the ball with pace and play well in transition with the space provided. They need to move the ball as fast as they did. Now, I don't think Crystal Palace is going to be anywhere near as open as Wolves were. So I think it's going to be a little bit difficult, and there needs to be a little bit more tidy and clever in terms of, being able to play in tight spaces, because I do think Crystal Palace will bunker a little bit, especially with the fact that they're also in desperation, starting off their season with 2 losses. And I do think it's necessary that Chelsea, because Crystal Palace is not going to be as open. We're going to see Chelsea. They did inside a number 9, which in these sort of games might, will proven to be necessary, because a number 9 in these sort of situations can make a goal out of nothing. Who is that guy that can get a goal out of nothing? Because the space is not going to be there to attack Crystal Palace like it was at Wolves. This is at Stamford Bridge. I'll go with the Chelsea win. I'm going to ride with my heart. I'm going to say Chelsea win. I don't. Will they win? I don't know, but I'm going to ride with my heart. I'm going to ride the momentum that they, had in that opening day, in that game against Wolves. Newcastle taking on Tottenham. Another brilliant game. This game will be at St. James's Park. Newcastle's atmosphere is going to be ruckus, electric. And Newcastle have had some, heavy pounding. They've dominated Tottenham, over in the recent fixtures. Embarrassed Tottenham. And, this is a difficult one. Tottenham Day, opening day, disappointing to Leicester, despite, being really, really good in that first half. But then they followed that up with the 4-0 win. Newcastle has been pretty disappointing so far. Now, the opening day, you lose a red card. You lose your player to a red card early in the game. And yes, Southampton but should you get dominated by Southampton the way that they did in that opening game in terms of possession and chances created and all that? Should they get dominated as much as they did at St. James's Park, even though they went down a man early? I do think it was a little a little alarming in the way how Southampton were completely controlled the game. They had 19 shots to 3, 4 shots on target to 19 shots to 3, 78% possession for Southampton. I know you went down a man early, but that's a little alarming. And then they had that game against Bournemouth where it took a late equalizer from Anthony Gordon to level it. Again, not really that great. I do think Tottenham, in terms of general play, has been better than Newcastle this season. But Newcastle being at home, St. James's Park, I think that will be a big factor. This is the first big game that Newcastle has had this season. I'm going to go with a draw. That's why. Because, if it was at Tottenham, I'd say Tottenham win. Neutral Stadium, I'd probably say Tottenham win. But since this is St. James's Park, I will give the benefit of the doubt to Newcastle, and I think they'll get a point out of it. They can also win. We know Newcastle, the sort of psychological edge they have over Tottenham. And that was our last game. Obviously, the other game is Manchester United, Liverpool. We already did that in the last segment. So we'll take a short break here. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top headlines and answer some of these questions we see in the chats. Before the break, we did the full preview for the Premier League Match Day 3. We move on to react to some of the top headlines. I will answer this question real quick. Okay, a lot of this doesn't make sense to me, but the one thing I am able to pick up is the Mark Gahey. How is the Mark Gahey deal? Well, the Mark Gahey deal is off. Newcastle were not able to get him. It didn't get through. Crystal Palace were able to hold on to him. Despite Newcastle's heavy pursuit, Mark Gahey will stay at Crystal Palace. Moving on, though, if you could clear up what you're trying to say, I'll answer the rest of them, but it's a little confusing exactly what you're trying to ask there. But moving on, though, with the rest of the top soccer headlines going on, obviously a lot of the top headlines is the transfers, right? But some of the transfers I didn't get to. Spurs, they sent Lo Celso to Real Betis. This was minutes before the end of La Liga summer transfer window. It's reported to be around 5 million or so. And then Tottenham were able to secure a priority option for Johnny Cardoso. A priority option. I don't know if you have. I don't know. I've never heard that actually. It's a strange one. So they're closing on a deal to get Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis in the future. Essentially, that's what it is, which is good. It's good that a U.S. MNT is making that next move. He's, in my opinion, he's a good player, and I think he can really challenge that position going forward. So once I figure out more about exactly what it means that he's a priority, we'll get it to y'all. Let's go back though. Wow, it was such a busy day in football. Di Maria came out and had some strong comments talking about Louis van Gaal. We know, let's just have context. Angel Di Maria, his worst, the worst time that he had in his career was that Manchester United stint. For some context, And yeah, Angel Di Maria, and obviously we also know some of the bad blood that Netherlands had with Argentina at the World Cup. Van Hal, the the sort of tenseness between Van Hal and Argentina. You saw Messi celebrating in his face, and then afterwards having something to say to him, and when Di Maria was speaking to another sports network, he said the worst. This is word by word what he said when asked about who's the worst coach he's had. The worst is Van Gaal. You can be sure of that. In case you had any doubt, I'll clear that up for you right now. Wow, that's some strong things to say, and yeah, that's again, when you have your worst time at your career, you're gonna, I wouldn't say it's expected. I think it was a little harsh the way he came out and said it. But look, it's his opinion, and we know the negativity between Louis Van Gaal and Argentina, Netherlands, and Argentina in general has a lot to do with it, to say the least. Thuram. Inter Milan got a big win over Atalanta, an Atalanta team that's going to be trying to battle. They're up for the top four. They were able to win 4-0. Thuram was able to have, Lilian Thuram was able to get a brace. And Simone Inzaghi, he was very happy over his striker's performance. He said, Inzaghi said, Thuram is starting to get more experience in Serie A and is building on last season. It all starts from his mentality and his hunger. He returned to the training ground early from vacation because he know that we needed him. Inter Milan, they're gonna be up there again. I think they could get that that Serie A. It'll be their third and fourth year. They're building something special at Inter Milan, I have to say, and they're having consistency. And I like to see them be, they reach the Champions League final. Can they take that next step? Can they be, a big outfit in this Champions League as well? So really start, announcing themselves on the world stage. Because, Inter Milan, we don't look at them as the way we look at City, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. We don't see Inter Milan in that way. We did in the past, but right now we're a little bit fringy on them. I want them to build, now I don't want them, I don't really care, I'm not an Inter Milan fan, but it would be good for them to sort of build their name on a Champions League stage. You make that run once, okay, you're sort of looked at as a sort of fairy tale run. But they go up and they make a sort of run again, and they don't necessarily have to reach a final, but they just need to be dominant in the Champions League, and they need to, they need to beat one or two like top teams. If they can show that again, we'll start slowly respecting Inter Milan as one of the top greats again in terms of top clubs in the world. And San Siro is a marvelous atmosphere. We know there's some situation going on. I think they're gonna move stadiums, so they should take advantage of San Siro while it's there for them. Tommy Abraham, he joins AC Milan on a loan deal from Roma, on a year-long loan deal. We know, Roma have need more depth at that number 9, especially with Giroud leaving, and Abraham, he had a great start to his Roma career. He had 27 goals in his first season with Mourinho, but since then he hasn't really been able to reach those heights. He also had a ACL tear, which ruined his 23-24 campaign. So yeah, it's good to see. Roma also signed Dovbyk, and Dovbyk, he was the top scorer in Spain's La Liga last season when he scored 24 goals. So that's also going to be very, very vital for AC Milan as well. I think Abraham, he'll sort of battle for positioning, and yeah, I think that's a good move for him, just to get change the scenery, and we'll see if he's able to figure out. McTominay, Billy Gilmore, they both will be joining Napoli, the Scottish duo midfield. McTominay will be joining from Manchester United, and then Billy Gilmore will be joining from Brighton. Look, I'd say interesting moves from Napoli. McTominay, I could see the value in McTominay for Napoli with Conte. Maybe he wants them to play a sort of a similar role as maybe Nemanja Matic did for him at Chelsea, but with that extra element of him being able to play further up and get some goals for the team. I think Billy Gilmour is the big one. He can come in and he can help this Napoli team have more control of the ball, more control of the position. He's a real tidy and clever player in that midfield. So yeah, I like that sort of move. But yeah, wow, what a great episode. Thank you guys for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna